Wow, what a most excellent couple of days. Whew. Oh, hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Guns and Cameras podcast. You know, there's an old saying that goes, something ain't cool until you've worn the new off. And let me tell you, my friends, that is absolutely the case, because here is what is now a very cool camera. I just got back from a couple of days chasing sunrises and mountain goats, climbing all over cliff faces, with very expensive rifles, I might add, and camera gear, all with the goal of capturing the most authentic, perfect image for my clients. And that begs the question, how far are you willing to push yourself and your gear in order to get that shot? Our next guest is a master at pushing himself and his equipment to the absolute limit in the name of capturing those photos. We're talking the bottom of the ocean, the tippy top of mountains, and the bottoms of mine shafts, all in the name of capturing that most authentic image. I think you're really going to like this episode, so before I get too long-winded here, shooters, are you ready? Stand by. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Guns and Cameras podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Best, and today we are joined with a very special guest, Mr. Chris Vanloan from Chris Vanloan Photo on Instagram, Gundy's 2023 Photo of the Year winner, photographer extraordinaire. Chris, thanks for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Um, Man, I thought I'd be prepared for that question, right? So, yeah, I'm currently working as like freelance photographer, and I'm in marketing with a company called Audi Gear, which is kind of like a tactical apparel gear company at the moment. And my background was kind of from in outdoors wilderness training and guiding. Before that kind of led into all that stuff recently.
Wow, crazy. So I guess, let's dive into that a little bit. Tell us kind of how you got started, like with cameras. So when did you start shooting? Was it photo, was it video? And then how did your career kind of progress to this point?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So, I've always been into kind of the outdoors and just carrying like maybe a point and shoot camera back in the day, before we had iPhones and all that. And really, though, probably when I opened my own outdoors company, it was called Bay Area Expeditions, based out of the Bay. But we took people primarily on like backpacking overnights in Big Sur in groups 20. So you'd take a group of 20 rando strangers who'd sign up, hook them up with like top end kit. We had Kafaru packs and Big Agnes sleeping bags and pads and all that. And a bunch of my buddies coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan at that time, 2006, 7, we're coming back home and game to, kind of moonlight doing instruction and guiding. So it got kind of interesting. Some of those dudes went off and started to implement like TCCC being a requirement for first responders back then in Cali. So that was cool. On the side for us, for the company, they would teach stuff that people thought they wanted to do. Like people were like, hey, I want to do a land navigation class and learn first aid and also make a friction fire in like, an hour and a half maybe would be awesome. So, we did proper like 3-day land nav courses and, brought people through all that stuff and wilderness first aid training, that sort of thing. And then another thing we did was 4-wheel drive expeditions. So back when the whole like overlanding thing was, getting coined that from just off-roading and tripping around or hunting or whatever you're doing. We were taking people out to like Nevada high desert areas to be able to see like, wild animals like pronghorns, wild horses, stuff they've never seen, go to hot springs and all that sort of stuff. So, I founded all that and started bootstrapping that company. So I picked up a camera to capture all the adventures pretty much then and got to be self-taught on it. I think I ordered like a Canon D50 or whatever,
Cool.
50D.
Yeah. Were you
Yeah,
so
and
you
started
weren't
there.
were you doing any photo stuff before then, or did that kind of is that what kind of started it for you?
Yeah, that started it in a serious way, for sure. So that was kind of my main subject is people in the outdoors. Um, or just I got into landscape big and I got into nightscape photography um, early on, and that's what I got real passionate about because you get such cool effect out of it.
Right. Did you kind of know was that your did you kind of think you would end up here now when you first started that out, or were you thinking when you first started like I'm going to be the business owner?
Yeah, I was happy to just sort of like at the time get like I just enjoyed it is what I'm trying to say. So I guess I kind of wanted to do both. I did want to sort of pass that stuff off, but I got obsessed with it pretty quickly, and just wanted the opportunities all the time to test out new gear and lenses and get out there with people and all kinds of lighting conditions and environments. So I didn't think I'd end up here, though. No,
Cool.
not at all.
So when did you start to kind of transition from the kind of the outdoor adventure type to more of the defense industry stuff, or were they always kind of synonymous? Like when did the guns start kind of to come into the picture?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think from the beginning, because Bay Area Expeditions was sort of this idea of, early on, think of us as kind of like field craft survival, but like years before they were a thing, we were very much kind of pursuing the same kind of empowerment of individuals. I mean, we didn't take it as far as firearms instruction or anything that sophisticated. We were young at the time and everything else. And, part of it was to have just keep it fun flavor.
So how did you get started with the outdoor survival stuff, right? So is it
Yeah.
something you've done when you were a kid, or how did that happen?
So with the outdoor survival stuff, I really, got to an age where I was really wanting to go out and seek out adventure. And I think I was looking for, I was sucking in information on the internet the best I could and going out with my experienced friends the best I could to sort of get a grip on how to be able to go out, how to go out solo, how to get way out there solo, either on foot or in vehicle, and like the logistics and the skill sets that come with that to not screw yourself over. And so, in that, I kind of picked up that there was this thing called the search and rescue database, and I was in college at the time. So, the premise was to kind of um, to kind of put together rather a curriculum that standardized where people would go wrong and just tell them what to do and what not to do as best practices, if nothing else, to really keep things simple. And this is in an era when everyone thought they wanted to be Bear Grylls. Everyone thought it was super easy just to like rub two sticks together and get a friction fire out of whatever wood they could find. And they thought, everyone could be a super empowered individual. So instead, what we wanted to do is it's not real sexy, but we took the Boy Scouts always be prepared deal and taught people how to do that like an advanced way. So, for example, guess the number one demographic group that's picked up by search and rescue.
Then probably the muy macho types that think that you know they can hash it would be my guess.
So let's break that down a little bit. Like, what do you think that would look like in action?
Okay, so I guess probably guys like me, mid 30s, relatively fit, um, some experience, but not enough.
And why does that get dudes like us at the time into trouble?
Probably because our risk assessment meter is probably off. So we probably take more risks or put ourselves into stupid situations where we think we can get out of it, but turns out we can't.
Yeah, and all that's correct. It's like if you look that up, it's like white dudes 25 to 50 that are getting picked up the most. Guess what activity they're doing though the most?
Yeah, probably climbing something.
You would think, or maybe even something crazier like backpacking, because they're way out there, but it's not. It's by far and away, it's day hikers who get jacked just being complacent. And that's easy to do, you know. I mean, you can get lost pretty easy on a local trail by your house if you miscalculate sundown by a few minutes and don't have a light and there's no moon out. You know, it's happened
Oh
to a
yeah.
lot of my clients at the time. I heard all about it. So anyway, just being prepared with like the right kit, breaking down what that means for what activity, and doing stuff like leaving an itinerary. That's like a majorly life-saving thing. We taught about like at the time personal locator beacons and what spot was at the time. Just gave them options for that. And again, if you're day hiking, you know, all that. The number one reason people were picked up also in that activity was not having or not knowing how to use their navigation equipment. So it sounds, that's like the definition of being lost, right?
Yep.
So anyway, we just prepare all that into a package for people to follow. And yeah, well, I could go on and on about that. Sorry, but
No, you're good. That's awesome. I love kind of finding out how people ended up falling into where they're at right now, right? Because that, I mean, you could probably still do some of that stuff? Because I mean, that seems pretty relevant still. Or do you just now focus mainly on the content creation side of things?
yeah. So actually, I did that for about what, like about 15 years, dude. I've been camping with like over 2,000 strangers in the woods with like no potty, no facilities, getting water out of the creek.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm in my 40s now, so I had a good run. It was awesome. There was no way I was going to get rich doing that in California. You know, when an intern cost like 70K a year out there and couldn't even like usually write in good English in an email and stuff, it was rough.
Yep.
Brick and mortar was completely out. Anyway, so not to sound cynical, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So now you do it for pleasure, not for business. That makes sense.
So for years, that's where where I was winding it down for years, I was trying to figure out how I could parlay that probably into some form of photography. That was what I really wanted to do at that point. I was like, let me take the piece I really love about this and I'm still passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to get someone killed, you know, and there's a lot less stress and liability involved. And see if it's marketable. And, you know, my photography by then was good enough, it was getting attention and people were telling me I was onto something.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, my problem then is, you know, still a valid problem now, which anyone who, you know, supports you in becoming a photographer, that's really cool, but ask them how many photos they bought today
Mm-hmm.
or this month. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, unless you have a plan and a hustle behind it, it can be an aimless pursuit.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hard things is going from a a not hobbyist, but kind of, you know, it's converting it from the not paid to the paid, right? I don't know that I've
Right.
had a client that or somebody I've worked with that I was able to successfully convert from like a not paid, like, hey, I'm going to do some great photos for you to start out, to an actual like profitable client, right? But that's the expectation though on my end even wasn't there. Like I knew that, right? I knew that if you're doing work for free and you're trying to build a portfolio, the odds of you ever getting paid by that person are pretty slim. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a huge conversation alone, is just trying to how to get out of that box. Everyone's going
Dude.
to always offer you, you know, back in the day it was photo credit, which is hilarious because you're
Hmm.
like, photo credit where? You know, like, what are
Right.
you putting this on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? And all of a sudden everyone's just going to beat down my door, you know?
Let's talk about guns and cameras. So this
Yeah.
question here is kind of fun. What is in your camera bag right now? What gear are you running? And then what's in your gun bag? Those are the two things we're going to talk about next. So let's start with camera. What's in your camera bag?
Yeah, sure. Can I
Yeah, man, grab it.
let me just, this is my workhorse for the most part. This is a shoot Canon I have consistently forever. You know, when I started shooting, I bought a bunch of lenses early on and not bodies, and so
Mhm.
that kind of committed me. I felt like to Canon. I like to run a bunch of primes, doing landscape and portrait stuff. A lot of the work I was doing obviously was shooting, on my own terms, so that makes it easy to shoot with primes and you get to dictate everything that's going on, right?
Mhm.
So this is a EOS 1DX Mark III.
Nice.
Yeah, I've came up on 5Ds for the most part, from the 5D Mark III and 4 and the 2 actually, yeah, and then got to this thing. I got, you know, I almost jumped ship. The dynamic range and the ISO on Canon was hurting me a lot for the type of photography I was doing. Low light in action, bad mixed light.
Yep.
And when this thing came along, I was coming on for an action base shoot with Justin Milnick, who's the. Do you know him by chance? He's the.
Yep. Met him a couple times, right? SEAL team dog guy, right?
Yeah, so Melnick actually outfits the show and was a lot of the outfitting direction for the show, and that's how he actually got on the show and relevant. It's because he had the canine, but he also had all these cries from being a photo producer in the industry way early on. I think Ernesto cries like his brother-in-law or something crazy like that. Don't quote me. Uh, so anyway, they they're renting a Blackhawk and a movie set out on the California coast for a day, and the frame rate on the 5D wasn't going to cut it, in my opinion, on that. So I ended up with this, and I've been stoked ever since. Can't ask for a whole lot more at this point with what these things can do. And then for a lens, primarily, this is just a one-trick pony. It's a 200-2.0, and the just the little bit of image quality and low lightability edge that this thing has makes a lot of images just really pop. I like shooting, I came up shooting a lot of wide with landscapes, or like maybe 50 even millimeter with people in landscapes. But for doing product and kit, there's nothing like the definition and detail you're going to pull out of something a little more telephoto.
Yeah. I love working with the zoom lens, man.
Um,
I like the 70 to 200 is one of my favorite pieces of glass to use for a lot of my stuff.
yeah, I have
But
dreams of going mirrorless. I mean, I've backpacked all over with this rig and just, hoofing around every shoot. But yeah, mirrorless and 70 to 200 is the dream. Probably sooner than later, and especially for the video aspects. And then I've got like a 24 and a 35 prime. These guys are just
nice.
still holding on and surviving. I think these are like Gen 2 glass. And an 85, just for when I need a
Yep.
little bit less telly. And I've owned a lot of their primes. The 50, some of the widers. Well, I think they had a 14, and then there's a 135 from Canon that was nice. 100 macro, a few other macro lenses, some tilt shift. I played with a lot of stuff back in the day, and this is what I've pared it down to really for work.
Nice, man. Yeah, I think that, man, that comes from experience, though, right? Because I feel like I was talking to one of the other guys that we had on the show, and we were talking about how a lot of photographers go through kind of similar paths of as they pick up a camera, right? Usually you get a camera, you start with a kit lens, and then maybe they move into some macro, and then they move into, playing with long exposures, and then it's kind of funny how everybody follows the same path, but then you end up kind of finding your look and your feel towards the tail end of it, right? When it's like, no, like your eye is dialed to the primes that you like to use, right? Like I pack around a bunch of lenses with me all the time, and I probably only use one or two of them. I'll travel with five, but I'll use the two that I like. Um,
Right.
but
I've definitely like done some trips overseas where I'm like carrying like 80 pounds of glass and like
mhm.
a change of underwear and socks, and then just using a lens or
Yeah,
two.
the priority is the gear. The clothing, you're like, all right, I can get away with one pair of clothes,
Right.
but I need that extra room.
But I agree
Yeah.
though too. What's interesting to me to look at now is like I don't look at a ton of other people's stuff and didn't really like come up that way in photography. I just kind of followed what I thought looked cool and what I was doing. I just have
Hmm.
limited bandwidth for it unless someone shit's like super cool and amazing or whatever. And now, when I look at dudes across the industry, now that I'm tapped in and networked, it's cool to see everyone's particular style. And even myself,
Hmm.
as a marketing manager for a company, I send stuff out to people who I know have different styles. Like your studio stuff's great. I don't, I've got very limited experience in that. And I think when people start to specialize and they're real sort of like the artist in them, you know what I mean, comes through and their style comes through. Um, yeah, that's the most interesting thing to me about the industry right now is just seeing what dudes are
Yeah.
doing in their own flavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I love, it's kind of fun being, again, being in it because you see, I think I just jumped, not, I mean, not just jumped, but I've been off of the gear bandwagon for a little while now
Hmm.
because there was a point where, and again, social media is driving a lot of this stuff when it comes down to like even equipment, right? Where camera companies are now dropping new cameras, new lenses, new software every couple of months, right? And so they're, I guess, what do you want to call it? Like the camera review guys on the YouTube keep driving the sales of these cameras, right? So a new camera comes out every year, it's the same. Somebody gets on and starts saying, "This is God's gift to photographers. Y'all got to jump on this ship." And I'm kind of now, I'm like, you know what? I like the gear I have. I'm just gonna stay with this gear, and if it breaks, then I'll maybe think about buying something new. But I'm not gonna keep, dumping money on new gear just because y'all say it's the next greatest thing when I know the look I can get out of the stuff I have and that's the look I like and I'm just going to stick with that,
Yeah,
right? So,
that's why I've been stuck on this platform with these lenses and that look is because that's part of how I now view stuff. And yeah, I think that comes with maturity as a photographer. A lot of old dudes told me that back in the day,
yeah.
and a lot of them would just have glass and rent cameras, like working dudes, in the film days. They'd have their
Yep.
favorite glass and just rent over whatever the new hot body was, especially in the early digital days when you really were getting like a 5 times better camera, but really paying for
Yeah.
it. Now, honestly, dude, I think since the D800 came out, I just feel like we're there. Anything else is
Hmm.
freaking awesome. But
Yeah. Well, and you're pushing on a lot of them now. It's again, they're leaning heavily onto the video side. Like
mm,
if you got a 60 megapixel camera that can shoot great stills at a high frame rate, even the global shutter thing that Sony dropped, I'm sure Canon's going to probably do that here pretty quick. Those are all great. Like that's great for the photo, but most of the new features are being driven into the video side of things. So
good
at least
point.
that's what my perspective is.
That's true. Yeah, I'm just starting to think in video a lot more nowadays. It's a lot more
Hmm.
relevant, obviously, for like just cranking out, feeding all the Instagram and social media channels for brand marketing now. As much as I like cool photos, I got one more thing for you too. I don't know, for messing around in the field, I used to carry around some Canon speed lights or maybe like a big ass Ellen Chrome battery pack
Hmm.
setup. But I've been messing around with these a little bit. Pro
Nice.
photo, yeah. This is the B10 Plus. So this came out
Cool.
maybe 3 years ago. For the most part, though, for working outside and being portable, it pretty much fits the bill. I mean, unless you're probably trying to overpower the sun or something from far away in the middle of the daytime. But I mean, for anything practical you're going to do to aid a photo outdoors, not make it look super artificial, it's been amazing. So
Yeah, I've
that's about
been
it.
I've been shopping for some new strobes because I started on Pro Photo and I was doing a lot of like e-commerce, like Amazon product photography in studio, but not a lot of people are shooting on strobes anymore. It seems like, right? And so but I've been kind of shopping around. I would love to get some of those Pro Photo strobes, man. It's on my list of things to buy actually as I move more because I'm trying to move back even into more of the photography side. Like video is great, but it's a lot of time and effort. And for me, where I'm at, I want to get back more into the art form of the photography, right? And you know, I'm gonna buy a shop differently for gear with that perspective. So
Totally makes sense. Yep.
if you got to hook up on those strobes, send it my way.
I wish. Yeah. Pro photo. Hey, let us know.
Right? All right, man. So that's in the camera bag. What do you got in your gun bag? What's your everyday carry? What do you pack around?
Yeah, the EDC. I've got some spicy guns here if you want to take a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. That's hey, man. Guns and cameras.
Let's see.
Let's see 'em.
Let me start with the EDCs. I've got a little EDC section on the wall over here. I've got, sunglasses, the knives, the flashlights. I grab a few things off here.
Nice.
Tourniquet, couple other options, but the primary stuff. Let's see, Microtech and Mod Light for the pocket.
Nice.
A lot of the time, I'm just running around with the 365. As you guys know, it primarily takes the SIG red dot, so I ran that till the battery went out, and I'm just experimenting with irons, and I actually really dig this guy with irons, especially for what it does. This is what the Filster holster. I don't know, I'm trying it out. It's cool with sweats and that kind of thing, easy fit, but tends to ride up. Might be why it's marketed at women more. I think if you have hips, maybe it runs better. But I don't know. And then
Nice, dude.
This is one of the favorites. Got the C2 DPO
Sweet.
in a tier 1 holster with a little FUPA pad there to help the angle.
Man.
Helps draw the gun in a little bit when it works right. And then we got a 16 in here, and then some Neo mags if I want more than that to throw in the pocket.
Nice.
And then,
awesome.
Let's see. You go to the other wall you can't see. I just got done building this guy out. I showed the doctors this, and that's how they confirmed I was fully autistic. Is this guy. It's a MCX TAC Ops barrel length, I think, the 6.75 inch barrel with 300 SPS in the boss. Homie over at Taylor Tack Arms did cool Arid Cerakote job on it. I got a SIG LT for a steel, but it was an 11.5, and it was during the whole Bendy Boy crisis, and I just didn't know. I thought about buying a new old model MCX upper receiver for it to stop the barrel deflection, that kind of thing, but I ended up just selling the upper and keeping the lower for this build. So it's SVR. I've been working with B5 Systems a little bit. I owned a bunch of their stuff anyway, but that's been fun. Got the rail panels on here or whatever. Let's see.
That's trick, man. That's trick. I love it.
This is Astra. She watches podcasts and talks to people on my Zoom meetings often.
That's awesome.
Let's see, here's a 14.5 I just got together with some spicy accessories. We've got an end gallon of Surefire Mini. It's a CAC upper.
Sweet.
The Schmidt short dot is amazing. I know people will talk shit about LPVOs in general and that kind of thing, but really like pushing a 14.5 pretty long range with good ammo with this thing is super fun. Got the TACCOM on there, 7.5 MOA, mostly for photo shoots right now. I'll slap a Voodoo thermal on there from time to time, which is right over here. I'll show you that build next. But anyway, yeah, if you ever get a chance to fuck with one of these, try it out.
Dude, I love that. It's been cool to see, I don't know if you can be a photographer or a videographer or a creator in this industry and not end up with as many guns as you have cameras. Or the other way around. Because I think the thing is, too, is people don't realize that it's easier to buy guns because as expensive as they are, they're still cheaper than most camera gear, right? So it's...
And they hold their value better, generally,
they do.
too. Flippable, tradable.
Right.
Here's an 11.5 CAC I've been building out.
Sweet.
Love the Raid XE, by the way. I've had a Raid X, I've had Mauls. These things they're just super punchy and crisp. Like the edges are crisp, the laser really pops, the illuminator is a big step up from the X. This guy, I don't know, I'm a fan rather of short cans on 5.56s for the most part, just trying to take a lot of the shock and flash out of it for night, and this thing does a stellar job at that. Behind the gun, it's still pretty quiet. Got the one, was that 1 minute out? Are those the guys who redropped the Wilcox riser? Yeah, awesome. Yep. Thank you, dudes. And again, some B5 furniture on there.
Sweet.
Okay, last one. Got the Neurotic Duplicate 11.5 CAC, but
I love it, man.
With the aim point optics chain.
So decked out.
Full size can on this guy. I do love the Surefire minis too and have them, but since I got the PTR on that thing, I love EOTechs, but there's something about the aim point being on all the time. It is amazing. And then the way it works up when you're trying to run optics with the Voodoo Thermal, I think it just tends to mesh up a little bit easier than the EOTech does.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, that's trick, man. That's sweet.
And there's more.
So do you have a favorite? Which ones, if you had to pick out of all of those, which one would you grab?
Probably the Microtech, and I'd play it like a video game. I'd just work my way up like Grand Theft Auto and just acquire better guns for the challenge. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so let's transition here. So I'm going to share the screen. We're going to look at some of your stuff. All right, man. So we're looking at your feed here. Or one of them. I think you have a couple, but this is the one, Chris Vanloan photo, yeah?
Yeah, this is the good one.
All right, sweet, man. So, wow, where do we even start? Out of the stuff you've done recently, which is some of your favorite work?
Recently, I haven't posted in a while. Just probably the last year, most of my content goes straight to my clients, and I won't even really tease stuff out of it. I've just been trying to keep it tighter and more professional. The other thing, though, is how do you top Posty in a bison hide around the campfire?
Let's look at this.
Look at this kid.
All right, so you know this was going to come out. What's the Post Malone connection, man? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, that's funny. You'd probably think, and I think most people assume, I just got hired as a photog for a gig when he was hanging out with Grand Thumb, Mike Jones. And we call him Mike Jones in real life. And it's not like that, though. So it was really one of the only freak luck things that sort of happened to me. I was in starving artist mode at the time, and I think he's holding the gun I sold him on the local gun exchange boards, and that's how we met. I actually sold him 2 or 3 at once. So it was funny. I got a text one day from a dude saying, hey, I want to buy 15 grand of your listed guns. I'd like a couple CACs and a couple Triarchs. And, but I'm on tour for a while. And, but if you hold them, I'll buy them all when I get back in 2 weeks. And I was just okay. I was trying to figure out what to make of it. I'm who could that be? I live in Salt Lake, and I'm that would have to only be Post Malone. But with my luck, it's probably some modern interpretive dancer or some shitty comedian or BYU singer on tour. And I'm or it's a scam or something. So, for whatever reason, I think he was hey, this is Austin also. I could have easily just been oh yeah, duh, that's Austin Post.
Yeah.
But I just assumed that, life's not that amazing. And we just actually got into a text chat. We were talking about different night vision aiming solutions and other deeply autistic firearms type of gear subject matters. And I'm dude, this guy actually knows his stuff. He is clearly bought and run a bunch of stuff and tried it out. So I was already this guy's nerdily like me. I really dig it. But I didn't really put it together. So we started text for a week or two. And I finally get a text with him saying hey, I'm back in town. Do you want to meet up? Where do you want to meet? And I was let's just meet at the Maverick. It's the gas station. That's the Sev, for everyone on California, it's 7-Eleven basically
Yep.
equivalent. So I just roll into the parking lot with these three guns and my fingers crossed that I wasn't just getting jacked like by a Mexican cartel or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was wearing like 2A armor under my shirt and everything too. And like
Smart.
I roll into the parking lot though, so it's like a gas station by a Top Golf. And we're in the corner of the parking lot and I see like a couple cars way out to the sides in this empty section. There's a couple like giant Samoan dudes just sort of mugging me. And then an F-350 with Posty there, and he's just like, "What's up?" I was like, "Fuck, this is crazy." So yeah, we just hung out at the back of his truck, and he was just like, "These are awesome." And he was like, shouldering the gun, getting point index, checking them out. And these kids, like in a Honda Civic, were just like rolling by in the other like parking lot with their heads out the window, like, "Is that Post Malone buying machine guns in a parking lot?" So it was a trip, but he was super fucking cool. He's like the nicest guy ever. He's just so not egotistical. And later on, he just had my number still, so he invited me up to the house to hang out one night. So I'm out in Salt Lake. He's like 20 minutes from me,
Sweet.
car ride away. So yeah,
Dude, that's awesome.
it's crazy.
That's
And then
yeah, crazy how that works, man. That's awesome.
yeah, first time out when we took the photo of Mike Jones and him, like the top center one, he just invited me to hang out of the blue one night, and I didn't know what was going on. It was like 10 or 11 at night, and he was like, "Hey, we're going out shooting with nods. Do you want to come?" So I like scrambled to get a bunch of kit together, and I didn't grab a camera because whatever. So I got to his compound, and I get on my truck and whatever, and walk up to the deck where he's kicking it, and Austin walks up, and he's like, "What's going on?" And then, just Mike just steps out of the shadows like, "Hey, I'm Mike." And I'm like, "This is weird," because I was just like, is he about to ask me if I've ever done something and then get me to subscribe to his channel? So that was a trip, and we hung out at the compound for like, an hour or two getting kit together, and then I was like, "Okay, we're going to the shooting spot." I'm like, "Do you have a camera guy? Like, or do you have a video guy doing anything with this?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Should I get my camera?" And he's like, "Yeah." So super late, just went out of my way to grab that thing. And this isn't exactly a masterpiece. This is lit with like the headlights of an F-350 at night, but people loved seeing these guys together, and that was the amazing part.
Yeah, man, that's real life, dude. That's awesome. So let's look at which was the one that you got the Gundy's award for? Was it one of these ones?
I think it was the one we were just looking at, or one of the other ones of those two together. It probably was just that one. See, they
That's
just
cool.
kind of put up a preview of a few of my images.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So do you guys still hang out or what?
Yeah, I haven't seen him much since he went out to Nashville to make all the new country stuff. Last time we hung out was probably at SHOT Show, but yeah, he's been very gracious. He's invited me to a few concerts and parties. He flew me and Tim from Gallinson's out to go see him in Ireland, which was totally incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, his birthday's on the 4th of July too. What's better than that?
Whoa, that's hot. Hey guys, this week's episode has been brought to you by 1156 Productions and by Tokens of Valor. Tokens of Valor is my side hustle where I take sterling silver and bullets and I turn them into one-of-a-kind wearable works of art, aka jewelry, for both men and women. I hope you guys have been enjoying this week's episode featuring Chris Vanloan. The guy's an absolute rock star, and I hope he's inspiring you to take your cameras off of the shelf and maybe push them a little bit into the limit to get some better content, right? I mean, why not? It's a tool, might as well use it. Anyway, don't go breaking a $5,000 camera. Don't do that. I'm gonna get back to making some shiny things while you guys get back to enjoying this week's episode of Guns and Cameras. That's so cool. Well, what about, okay, so let's go back a little bit because I see here's Justin Melnick right here, right?
Yes, sir.
Nice.
And Pepper, the Dutchie.
Yep, and Pepper, yeah. So let's go back a little ways. So before kind of all the posty stuff, what was some of your favorite work? Because one of the things that I've always I've loved, because I've been following you for a little while, has been, I mean, you got a great eye for natural light and the stuff in the nature, which I now know comes from kind of your past doing the outdoor adventure stuff. But which of these, I mean, you got some underwater stuff. So which of this stuff is some of your favorite work? Some of the older stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to pick. I mean, I'm usually, again, like each one of these, there's maybe one or two selects or maybe a 1 or 2 day photo shoot, you know.
Yeah.
Or at least I've tried to put myself in, yeah, like as many environments as I can in scenarios. So working around the birds is amazing, definitely
Yeah.
challenging. You know, the type of rotor wash you're getting blasting your lens from Blackhawk is not awesome. Um, and that was, you know, my other, yeah, that was shot in the middle of the day. I was like, you guys, can we do this at sunset? But it's got to be a 12-hour photo shoot sometimes. You don't get to pick.
Dude, helicopters have always helicopters are tough because it's for me it's always the deciding how you want the blades to look, right?
Right. A lot of clients want the blur, especially if they're into helicopters. They don't want to see blades.
Yep. Well, in this one, like I don't know that people realize how that's like the right way you that's the way you want the blades to be, right? Like because if they go, you know, if you caught them where it's like perfectly lined up in the cross, it doesn't play nice. Like that is exactly on the diagonal. That's exactly where you want the blades.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
shooting fast on these, and you know, I'm a firm believer in composition. So if one of those
yeah.
blades was being cut off by the edge of the frame, I would have never posted that photo. Just would have gotten
Right.
tossed. So yeah, the nature stuff back here is a little more interesting, and then the adventure stuff, I think later on, or at least the LARPing stuff gets
Yeah,
better.
because you
But
got some stuff here where, yeah,
that's
you're
me. That
modeling
was,
too, right?
yeah, they made me. So, you know, one of my early sponsors, sort of for Bay Area expeditions, Tad Gear was one of them. And when Patrick left to start Prometheus Design Works, he outfitted me and had me do some modeling. This is a
Sweet.
selfie in Iceland. If you're into cameras, go to Iceland. It's incredible.
Dude, yeah.
It's hard to take a bad
Um,
photo. Yeah, that's me looking younger and better. Ooh, can you scroll up a little bit? So that triple wide one, that's actually the moonrise under the Milky Way, and that was just pure
ooh,
navigating to a good position
dude,
out in
yeah,
the Black Rock Desert. So you have that giant flat playa to scoot around to line everything up. A little bit of
that's
luck, a little
awesome.
bit of driving.
Dude, that's
That
incredible.
was like a
I love it.
12 or 13 shot vertical stitch, too, so the actual file on that's huge.
Yeah, that's one thing too that a lot of people don't realize is, and maybe you can talk a little bit about it just for a second, is the amount of effort that goes into, you know, we see these images like this, right? Like we see them all the time on social media, and it kind of desensitizes us to the amount of work that goes behind getting a photo like that, right? Like, talk a little bit about some of the, I mean, how much time goes into, you know, stitching something like that together at the time when you made it, right? Because I know we have AI tools now and stuff, and that helps. But
Sure. The stitch on that one probably wasn't too terrible, but it definitely took some tries. It probably took a few. You know, I probably shot that several times, you know,
hmm
sets of however many verticals to stitch together. So I was probably shooting for what, 2 hours at like 2 to 4 in the morning or something. You
hmm
know, 12 hours from home or something, and then definitely probably at least a couple hours of editing on something that big.
so yeah, so it's not just like, you know, camera up, boosh, got it.
Yeah.
No, awesome, dude. I love you. Got some great stuff, man.
Imperial Sand Dunes, that's a cool spot at the bottom of California, right on the border.
Nice.
But that's where they filmed the Jabba's barge scenes. Long exposure under the moon.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks like nighttime, man. So, do you still travel a lot, or are you kind of calming down a little bit now?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I decided to take a leap of faith and close down Bay Area expeditions just because I was getting exhausted and really did want to make a change. And
Yeah.
2020 in like February. So I just shut everything down, shut down the LLC, and I was like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll just move and do this and the world's going to end. So like I moved to Utah in March 2020 and like 3 weeks later it's total COVID lockdown. And that was actually a good opportunity though, because I was doubting for a while. I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I didn't actually know even that like TACAS existed. I had very little concept of like clandestine media or that guys are doing it successfully. I knew someone was doing it somehow and someone was getting paid somewhere. But it gave me, the COVID lockdown sort of gave me that opportunity to not have to go to something like doing group instruction again and get to sort of introvert and learn the game really well and just focus on that. And that was kind of a leap of faith, but I've done that kind of my whole life with business. That was my first business as well. I've always just done what I want to do, and if it sucks, usually I'll just suffer like a mindless zombie until something works out, and that's just you just grit it fucking through. I guess it's my advice. I guess maybe not good, but
Hmm. What has been your biggest, so let's talk about scale, right? What's kind of been the biggest project that you've worked on or have taken on to date?
that's tough. I mean, I guess I've definitely been on some multi-day photo shoots that involved a lot of traveling. I think.
Hmm.
So, okay, what comes to mind is probably my most recent shoot I did with Justin Melnick, where so his deal also is all the gear companies that get shit to SEAL team. He's doing
Hmm.
these photo shoots on his own dime is sort of like a thank you because they need that to run the show, and these companies
Yep.
need marketing. That's his background. But he's gotten so busy that he wanted to knock out like a year's worth of shoots in like 2 weeks. So we
Dang.
started off
Yeah.
in San Jose, doing a helo shoot on a training project with SWAT at I want to say the Hewlett Packard Ranch, which is insane. It was
Okay.
like 200,000 acres, like right around San Jose and the valley there. It's nuts. We jumped in the truck right after that and like drove through Tahoe through the night to do a couple other shoots. Hit Salt Lake. We did that caving shoot in Nevada. So that
Hmm.
photo of Justin on the with the dog on the way on the rope, it looks like he's just dangling a couple feet. He's at the end of about a 110-foot rappel there. So we were in a cave outside of Vegas, and
So you're
they,
talking this one right up
yeah,
here.
there you go. And there's some video and stuff for that we can link in, but yeah, that
Yeah.
was just this crazy vertical shaft I got to rappel down on the Atlas Ascender and Repeller. Like they sent me
Cool.
down on it, but yeah, that Batman box is like $100,000 contraption that pulls a dude up and down at high speeds without having to crank your way up a rope like that. So that was incredible. Then we were like, yeah, day before that we were like in the mountains in the snow doing an alpine shoot with M razors. So that's pretty comprehensive. It's pretty back to back, when you're traveling, and not just, this time, but those traveling shoots, if you're on someone else's schedule, you never know how it's going to go. If you're getting up at 5 in the morning, if you're taking the worst flights possible because they save money, if you're bunking with 15 dudes in a room on the road.
Yep.
Um, that one wasn't bad. Justin's awesome. I had a great time, but yeah, being on the road on a lot of shoots like that has probably been comparably challenging. Probably done about 10 little tours like that.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think the thing that I imagine a lot of your like clients, people you work with, like about a guy like you, Chris, is that you're like me in the sense that you like getting into the thick of it, right? I mean, to get down there. I mean, if he was to hire out like a professional photo studio or whatever, right? Most of those dudes aren't going to be like, if he asked them, hey, I need to put you a couple 100 feet down a shaft with a camera to get this picture, would you be okay doing that? And they'd probably all say no, right? So what I appreciate about your work is that you're, again, like I said, I can relate because I'm the same way. I like to be in it, right? And I'm like, I want to go as extreme, as hard, like as the guys are that you're taking the pictures of, because that's what gets you the most authentic looking picture, right? Like,
Exactly. That was my big thing. I started wanting to take photos of just people having their own adventures, whatever that
mhm,
equates to in modern times, not sounding
yeah.
cheesy, but yeah.
No, and
Um,
some of that, you have to be willing to suffer a little bit,
for
like,
sure. I got a funny one about some of the diving shoots, if you have a quick minute.
Oh yeah, man. I got nothing but time, so let's
If,
go.
if you want to pull up any of the underwater photos, just so I can reference, I learned to scuba dive by being invited to go on a trip with a company called Prometheus Design Works, based out of the Bay, um, down to kind of do some environmental cleanup work and take a little tour of an area in Baja. So, yeah, like that guy in the regulator right there, up on the left. Yeah, not the firearms ones. Those are just out in Coronado. Like, okay, so that guy was the guy from the original Monster Quests out in Baja. So when they caught video of like this giant squid or whatever that was supposed to be 100 feet long and whatever else, those early episodes, Dale
Yeah.
was the guy. So Dale was guiding Patrick from PDW down there to, get some media content, do some environmental cleanup of these drifting poachers nets. And here's where it gets interesting. Okay, down in Baja, fish poaching is a huge problem, and a big thing that they're after is this fish called the tutuava. It has a dive bladder that on the Chinese black market for medicinal stuff, it goes for like more than the cost of cocaine.
Holy
And you're
moly.
not having to smuggle cocaine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been down there, Baja's locked down by military checkpoints, but obviously shit still gets around.
Mm-hmm.
So we are sort of also being communicated with by people down there who sort of run all that in the areas. Basically, poaching is run by the cartels,
Mm-hmm.
and we're sort of being told what's cool and what's not, to put it mildly. The In a nice way though. And then we're also working with a woman who is like the park ranger authority. She's sort of more than that. It's like the empowerment of like an environmental sort of like sheriff of the beaches or something, almost like a harbor master
Gotcha.
plus some in that area for environmental protection.
Gotcha.
But she doesn't really have like enforcement. It's not like she has a team of fucking dudes with guns or anything. But we're out there anyway on the water with all of them for a few different trips, doing different stuff. On one of them, we're gathering poachers' nets that have already been drifting or sunk. So they're no good to the poachers, but they're killing wildlife. So we'd
Mm-hmm.
go down there, remove them. A lot of times there'd be like sea turtles, seals in them, stuff like that. Super lame, huge nets, and we'd recover them and drag them in. And there was a few dives in between, summers where we'd go down to do this for a few days. One of them was a geological expedition. We were like sampling a geothermal vent that was undiscovered. So I was first invited on that one. I learned to scuba dive and then learned to how to rent an underwater housing, because that's not exactly easy either, depending on where you're at.
Right.
If you're on the California coast, Monterey, San Diego, places where people go diving, you can rent a housing and you just sort of like have to figure out how to use it. It changes all the controls on your camera to like levers and dials and knobs and stuff that are very different.
Yep.
So you kind of have to get used to that, and then you have to trust, submerging your camera in this thing, especially when you're scuba diving. Surfing's one thing, but when you're going down to depth, that you're not going to flood a
Yeah.
housing, right? And even if you flood the housing, it's not just your camera you lose. A lot of times they're going to make you pay for that $6,000 camera housing as well.
Oh dang.
So there's a lot of stress involved. But anyway, so I want to give you that background. Now, here's a quick like synopsis of a story. So we go down there one time. I accidentally forgot that I had a Glock magazine in one of my backpacks, and here we are in Mexico. So we got rid of that thing. Once we're at our destination, I'm like, holy fuck. So everyone goes through their stuff, and we're like, okay, we're Americans. No one else has like casings or anything in the car, nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we go out on a dive. It's super choppy. My homie brought the gear for me, which never let your homies bring your gear for you, by the way. So
Mm-hmm.
I got put into a harness that I couldn't sink in, but I was stuck in the chop. and it was floating off of me and choking me at the same time. And I was just like, fuck, this is a tough one. We couldn't locate the spot we were trying to go to, so we go back or whatever after a while fucking around in the ocean, almost drowning. And I was like, dude, that one did not go smoothly for me. Next year, if I come, I'm going to be completely decked out and just get my own diving shit. But I decided next year, I was like, bro, renting a camera housing for this much money and doing all this shit to shoot underwater is like playing the lottery. Shooting underwater is super fucking hard. Most of your shots are going to be, you know, contaminated either by shit in the water, or it's going to steal your autofocus and focus somewhere between you and what you're actually trying to shoot. There's also the magnification factor in the water that's making that focus harder. So you got to be really careful with your settings while you're shooting to get anything worthwhile, and it takes a lot of luck. So I decided sort of not to go on this last one. And so my homies team goes down there anyway, though, and they go out on the boat with Sarwen, the woman in charge of, you know, being the harbor master, whatever the fuck you want to call it down there. And they went and they got a bunch of sunken nets that are covered in algae and stuff. By the way, these nets are made, like down in Baja, there's just these like towns that are all dirt roads, sometimes it's concrete floors at best, and you'll see dudes weaving these like, you know, 20-meter long plus nets by hand and selling them to dudes for like $5,000. That's part of why they're protective of them, the cost.
Gotcha.
How hard it is to mess with it on top of just the feds fucking with their stuff, right?
Yeah.
So on the way in, after they were diving, pulling sunken nets, like right here, Sarwen's like, there's another one, but it was an active net. So she told him to pull it. And my dude was like, have you lost your mind? We can't do that. And she's like, no, I'm the federal government. We're going to pull that out. So they did. And then, they took that shit back to shore, and then they just bury it all with anything that could be poached, like, you know, tortoiseshell, any dead animals. They just bury it all on the beach under like 100 feet of sand. Gotcha. Anyway, that night, they're at my buddy's house out on the beach that he's been building for years, and like 15 white SUVs just start rolling down the road. And they sent a message. They basically were getting into life or death, like, situation as far as, what can I say? They were getting prepared to battle, basically.
Holy.
And it didn't end up happening. The dude also has had his house broken into so many times. There's like, you know, probably secret passageways and hidden tunnels and shit out of there, but I won't comment on that. But I just barely missed that little adventure. Scuba diving and photography is very challenging. That's all I'll say. If you're in warm water, somewhere clear, and you have an affinity for it, that's amazing. I wish I was that into it.
Yeah, I was. I've done a little bit. I've never done it, but I've done enough research to know that it's not exactly something that I would want to get that far into. At least putting my actual camera down there. I mean, a GoPro or something that's water made to be doing that is one thing, but because you don't want to go cheap with that, right? Because I think that's the thing is you look at you pull out, you think about how much your camera costs, and you're like, well, how can I get it in the water? And then you look at the cost of the case, like the actual dive cases, and you're like, nah, it's too much money. And then you start looking for economic options, and then you see what's available, and you're like, I just don't think it's worth the risk, man. Like, even if it is a $600, like whatever those deals they got coming out now, it's like you really want to put your, you know, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 rig in a $500 case and hope that it works out, because, you know, saltwater, if it gets in there, you're done.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's anxiety inducing, dude. So I've been just like on the chop, you know, in a boat where it's like 100 degrees out and you're in a 14 mil wetsuit being choked to death, just getting seasick, and you're just like looking at your camera like, is this thing gonna go to next? Like, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, you got to embrace. Yeah, but you know, that's the thing. You got to. It does. I think that's one thing about photographers in our industry too, is that there is a more, there is a higher willingness of the photographer to suffer a little bit for the sake of the content, right? So.
For sure. I think a lot of people are here because they're obsessed with it, so it totally makes sense.
You would have to be, right? Because again, like I had one guy call me and he was like, "Yo, I'm thinking about getting into shooting the gun, like getting into the gun stuff." And I'm like, "All right, man. Well, just let me tell you, you got to be willing to basically kill all of your engagement on your social.
Mm,
You got to put in a lot of time and effort on the front end because you got to prove that you're trustworthy. You got to prove that you're safe. You got to prove that you're familiar with the platform. Because that's the thing, right? Is like most of the guys, you and a couple of the other people I've interviewed so far with this show, again, we also shoot the guns, right? It's not like we just shoot the cameras. We all are aware of. We all train. We all study gun safety. We all try to, we are invested in the industry more than just, hey, I just shoot the guns, right?
right.
So that's a big expectation. And if you don't do that, or if you're not willing to be on board with that, you're probably not going to get very far in the industry. So
Yeah, I agree. And things change fast, trends change fast. You have politics, you have figures to, you know what I mean? There's a lot going on with it. And I think unless you're obsessed with it and kind of living it, I would just do what you are obsessed with and living with. Like, it's cool, like, honestly, getting out of Bay Area expeditions. I looked in maybe doing some, like, overland photography. And the market was really not as open. It wasn't as accessible. There wasn't as much media around it. I don't know. It just didn't seem like the same, and there was more involved in getting out. But really, I think I was just more into this at the time. And sort of like now that I've been in this side of the industry for some years, like I love it. I don't want to say I've like gotten it out of my system, but I would be pretty happy working with anything else I was obsessed with too at this point. If it was cars, if it was cool music shit, whatever. I mean, I'd be just as happy keeping this as a hobby and making my money in one of those venues too. It's just this is what I happen to know about.
yeah, yeah, right on. I agree. I'm there with you. Okay, so we got a couple more questions, and then we'll close it out. But I think we kind of talked about it, but I don't know. Maybe there's something bigger. A guy with all of your adventures has got to maybe have a few of these. But what has been your oh shit moment? Could be good, could be bad. But what's been the oh shit moment in your career to date?
In my career, let's see. Damn, I mean, there's just been so many of them. I think definitely starting over with, and then COVID slapping was sort of an oh shit moment. But again, it seemed like it sort of worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, on the bad, yeah, I thought it was a bad thing. It wasn't. Definitely oh shit in a good way has been shooting with Austin. Posty has just gotten so many likes. I just love that people love that he's
Mm-hmm.
shooting guns and they're okay with it. Sorry, I had to think that
Yeah,
one through. He's like Keanu Reeves. Everyone's just like, oh, it's cool he does that. Like, people aren't making it political.
right.
And just sort of seeing that go down and seeing how happy it's made some people and so many people and, who are maybe in the industry who've gotten more respect for him and his music, sort of in his own perspective now a little bit more. And, a little bit vice versa. Some people are just sort of into guns, seeing him doing it, and they're kind of like, okay, maybe the shit's not just all mindlessly evil. Anyway, that's been cool.
Awesome. And then, so what's coming up next for you, man? What are you looking forward to in the next year, 2 years?
Good question. Honestly, I'm kind of trying to. I'm trying to expand into video and different sources of media. Definitely being at the desk doing marketing changes my perception on sort of what's needed and valuable to clients. So,
Yeah.
having more of a multispectral ability and output in media would be great, and also just continuing to network and tap that with the right people of interest, really, in the right adventures is always the mission, and trying to keep that interesting for me and the viewers is just the same ongoing battle, and that's what I'll be doing. What I'd
Yeah.
like to do, I feel like I've gotten so many like cool locations to shoot at now, like underwater, in the desert, snowshoots. If anyone knows how to link me up with like a submarine deck in the Arctic, that would be dope. Or maybe some
Okay.
Space Force training shit. on a base somewhere. Let's go. Maybe
Right.
one of Bin Laden's villages on one of these bases for training. Just get some photo permits and get going.
Dude, I recently I just watched, I think it was a Yes Theory video of the guy. He got into Baghdad and was traveling around in there. So, I mean, maybe, although in the middle of the videos when all the stuff in Gaza started kicking off, so that made it interesting. So,
That's wild.
I don't know. It was open for a second. I don't think it's open anymore, but dude, that'd be a good time to get over there. But
Dual access
um,
cable tour.
right, locations is huge, man. Like people don't realize how tough it is to find. Like once you find a good spot and you kind of know how to get in there, you kind of have to protect that information a lot, right? Because yeah, it's a big value add if you can reach out to a client and be like, one, I can take a good picture. Two, I know some people that look good in the pictures. And three, I can get them into some pretty unique places. That's all super like top secret stuff.
Yeah,
So
in this
things like that.
industry, if I could grow anything, I do have access to be able to rent some stuff here and there, like M razors or, boats, rafts. That's all cool.
Yeah.
Helicopters get astronomically expensive, but the exotic locations are really where you can put a fraction of that budget and make the whole thing without all that, right? So
Right.
props are awesome, but I would totally agree. If I could I've gotten around a lot of the cooler places where people have shot now, but I'm still always looking for more, and it usually is those hidden spots no one wants to tell you about. You got to find on your own, whatever else. So, yeah, I'm always poking around.
True. All right, man. So, how can people get a hold? What's the best way for people to reach you if they want to hire you or work with you on some projects?
Yeah, email probably at chris@vanloanphoto.com. I've got a website, vanloanphoto.com, and I'm pretty responsive on the gram. It's amazing how much business gets done there.
Right. And then, kind of to wrap it up, who should, out of your network, who would you recommend being on the next episodes or future episodes of Guns and Cameras?
Oh man, there's so many good dudes in this industry, and I kind of like everybody, so I could probably name off 5 dudes. Have you talked to Luke from Clandestine Media?
I have talked to Luke, but I haven't asked him to be on the show yet, but I might.
Yeah, he'd be an interesting dude. Melnick might be interesting because he really did start off doing photo shoots back in early GWAT. Uh,
Yeah, if you want to connect us, that'd be great. I've tried to reach out to him directly for a few things. I mean, I met him a couple times, and I've tried to kind of connect because I know that he does I mean, the guy is so busy though,
he's
right?
so
Because he's got the
busy.
Stroop 9
Yeah,
stuff, he's got all the Cry stuff. But I'd love to be able to, yeah, connect with him. So if you're willing to do a hookup, that'd be sweet. But no pressure there because I know uh, he's slammed, but he'd be awesome. I'd love to try to get him on here for sure.
and there's also that dude they work with. What's his name? Matt Lingo, right? He's like good photographer, but he does like pretty good like Photoshop work and backgrounds and effects and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be sweet too. Yeah, I'll have to. I'll hit you up, Chris, and I'll have you like send these over to him in an email or whatever, and maybe I'll have you help me track them down and see. But that'd be awesome. I'd
Good
love to
deal.
get some of those dudes. All right, man. Well, awesome. Thank you for being on the show. I appreciate your time. Great stories. Yeah, dude, I'm stoked to have you on the show. So, uh, do you have any final words of wisdom or something, advice you could give to people watching this that are thinking about getting into guns and cameras?
Yeah, sure. I think probably what we said before of just sort of like taking your own entrepreneurial battles in your own hands. If it's something you want to do, just go for it. See what sort of niche you can find with your own style, because that's where guys kind of make a name for themselves, in my opinion. That's why
Hmm.
I hire out other guys with different styles. Get good at something you're into, and just start trying to push it out there.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of Guns and Cameras. We appreciate you taking the time. Chris, it was awesome. Thanks again, man. You guys stay tuned. We got more coming. And yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
Wow. That looks pretty good. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Guns and Cameras. Chris Vanloan is an absolute rock star and a good friend, and I hope you were inspired to push yourselves just a little bit further. Also, if you don't already follow him, be sure to go to Instagram and type in @ChrisVanloanPhoto with these letters exactly, because he is shadow banned to oblivion. As are most of us though, because of, the whole, the gun thing, but whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching or listening. If you don't already, please follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram. We're trying to check all the boxes. It would really help us out. I'd super appreciate it. But in the meantime, you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you next time.